This episode of Survivor Hour has been graciously sponsored by the QBE Foundation, creating strong, resilient, and inclusive communities.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this episode of SCAR's Survivor Hour, sponsored by the QBE Foundation. Recently I sat in a courtroom witnessing a case of child sexual abuse, and I couldn't help but think about so many of us that have been sexually molested as children and the bravery that it took to reveal, report, and relive our abuse. This is the theme of tonight's program, revealing the secret, reporting the crime, and reliving the experience, none of which is easy. Mary Tyler Moore, the popular U.S. actress, was once quoted as saying, "You can't be brave if you've only had wonderful things happen to you." Tonight, we will discuss the 3 R's of child sexual abuse and the tremendous bravery it takes to reveal, report, and relive. Revealing our childhood secrets of sexual abuse is one of the most difficult things a person can do. There are so many reasons for silence around this topic: shame, fear, unfounded guilt, and judgment, to name a few, made only worse from living in a small community like Bermuda, which can be a deterrent for revealing. Some also choose to protect others from experiencing shame or reputational damage to their family and friends. Revealing requires courage by and support for a survivor, but it can also help in the journey of healing. Reporting a case of child sexual abuse is scary and difficult, but it is vital. For example, it's not easy to report a family member or your friend's family member. It's not easy to report that favorite teacher, coach, or church member. Living in a small community, I am aware of many cases involving trusted family members or friends of adult survivors that were not reported to the authorities when the abuse occurred. We are afraid to bring attention to ourselves or our families. But let's be honest, if our worst enemy abused our child, most of us would easily make a report and do everything in our power to obtain justice. We should have that same attitude as if that came into our home, if that thief came into our home and stole our personal property. We wouldn't hesitate to call the police. Why should we not have the same approach when someone steals the innocence of a precious child? Reporting takes courage and support. Again, it is vital that we do. Rarely does a child molester abuse just one child. As a result, reporting will help protect other children in a community. Doing the right thing isn't easy. It's not the easy thing. Reliving child sexual abuse experiences will be necessary when we report. Children will need to provide information to Child and Family Services. They'll need to provide their story to the police, the Department of Public Prosecution if it gets escalated to that point, and even in a court setting. Children of sexual assault are required to relive scary experiences, and adult survivors who report, they must dig deep to recall their pain that was pushed down for many years. This takes bravery, as it can be one of the most difficult things a child or an adult survivor will do in their life. To act on the 3 R's, reveal, report, and relive, requires support. Survivors of sexual assault and their affected families require support. Someone to be their silent cheerleader throughout this entire process, including the courtroom and beyond. Someone to cry with and someone to encourage and empower them. Someone that will continue to remind them how brave they are. The 3 R's put molesters on notice that we will no longer remain silent. They will understand that they are at risk of being convicted in court and experiencing this shame where it belongs, on them, not on the innocent. It's important to understand, even by practicing the 3 R's, there is a chance the abuser will be found not guilty in court or given a light sentence of incarceration. The important thing to remember is that regardless of the result, the survivor used their voice and could not be silenced. Although justice may not be delivered in a court of law, the truth is everlasting. It's been revealed. Tonight, we will discuss the 3 R's and why they each are important. I am Debbie Ray Rivers, the founder and executive director of SCARS, and this is Survivor Hour. My co-host is Dr. Alicia Hancock. She is a clinical registered Bermuda psychologist and a valued volunteer board member of SCARS. Also joining us on set is a well-known community member who will share with us the importance of the 3 Rs. I want to welcome Mrs. Mickey Parfit. Mickey is a brave, beautiful survivor. Mickey has experienced all 3 of the Rs and will walk us through her journey of living them. Also joining us on set is a well-known lawyer, former Attorney General, Assistant Supreme Court Justice, and a past chairman of SCARS. Mark Pettingill was instrumental in the formation of SCARS and our important work in this community. So welcome to you all. Mickey, I want to start with you. Let's talk about revealing the secrets of child sexual abuse. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Why do we think it's not? Why is revealing the secret of sexual abuse so difficult, you think?
You know, that I could think of so many reasons why.
Yeah.
You know, it's something about going through anything in Bermuda. You know, people know your business, people will judge you. You know, it's something that I've talked about every time is how much we place a stigma or judgment on people instead of asking, you know, looking at them, you know, like what happened to you, you know? So yeah, it is definitely,
Silencing, right?
yeah, it's
Um,
very,
it-
and fear.
and fear,
Yeah.
right? Because sometimes perpetrators threaten children.
Yeah.
You tell, you're going to have to go back to Portugal. You tell your mommy's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons that kids might not tell. They might even be confused,
Yeah.
right? They don't even know it's wrong, especially if perpetrators are saying it's our little game.
Yeah, exactly.
You know?
And what if the fear of not being believed
Yeah, that is
and
well.
causing problems in the family relationships?
Yes. And I've heard so many stories in our own community about parents that have taken that side, you know. That is a very real fear. Who's going to protect me? Who's going to have my back? Are they going to believe me? You
Yeah.
know? Yeah,
Yeah.
very real.
And we have to remember, I mean, these are children, right? I mean, they can't defend themselves. And it's not easy to reveal, it's not. But would you agree, Mickey, that being a survivor of childhood sexual abuse, a fellow survivor, right? Um, it helps in the healing process. Would you agree with that? When you tell
Definitely.
somebody
Definitely.
what's happened?
Definitely. It was a big step. It's a big step.
It is.
Because all those things are playing at you, you know, everything that I just explained, you know, the fear, the stigma, the shame, the guilt, everything,
Yeah.
you know, but the feeling I know that I feel in with myself to this day and everything that I'm doing to advocate for it, I feel strong. You know, I feel like there's nothing that can take me down anymore. You know, I am taking all of that anger and everything that whole experience has filled me with, and making a change in the community. You know, with you, Debbie, and you know, throughout my own activities as well. So yeah, it's a difficult thing,
It is.
you know, finding somebody that you can trust,
Yeah.
you know, for me, it took, I would say about, yeah, it took me a lot, 20 years to really dig into and tell somebody, you know, everything that had
Yeah.
happened to me during my childhood. And it took me about 13 years of drug addiction before I even got to that point, you know? So yeah.
Yeah. What was the motivating factor, do you
The
think?
rage. I think the rage that I was feeling in my heart day to day. Um, like I was just waking up angry. I see my abuser on the streets. I that happened to me once, and like the feeling that came over me, I can't even explain it because I'm not a dramatic person, but
Mm.
like I could almost feel the heat rising from my feet all the way to my head. I can't explain it no other way. And my husband was way down the road and he saw that. And he looked and he was like, oh my gosh, you know, and he came straight to me, you know. And I was just paralyzed there. I didn't know I couldn't move, you know. The rage and the anger of knowing that this person was still out there, still doing, you know, what they had done to me. And they definitely were doing that, you know, for many years,
To others.
you know, to others,
Yeah.
you know, out living their lives free and happy. And I'm here struggling after a 13-year addiction, you know, trying to put my life back together with a lack of community resources and literally feel like I was peeling my way out of, you know,
Yeah.
and yeah, it made me very angry.
Yeah.
Yeah, like full of rage. So
Yeah. And I first of all, I'm so proud of you
thank you.
that you have taken the darkness of your abuse and turned it into the light and helping others because that's really important
Yeah.
for our survivors. And it's not easy. Um, what do you think? I mean, we know that you went through a historical case of child sexual abuse as
Yep.
a survivor many years later. What do you think was the determining factor for that? What made you? Because that takes bravery
Yeah.
and courage. That's not easy, and not everybody can do that. But you did it.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I knew that he was still abusing other children. He literally left this island to go to another country, for which I kept getting, little word back here and there that this man had another child, actually two children, I believe, in another country, and was out there doing the same thing. You know, and again, just that rage. It's something about waking up every day and just being filled with rage and not really being able to, you know, find a way to get rid of it. It's crippling,
Yeah.
I wanted more for myself. I wanted to live. I
Yeah.
didn't want to just survive and yeah,
And you wanted to see accountability,
I
obviously,
wanted
right?
justice.
Justice.
And then that's, I mean, really at the end of the day, when I think of what he done to me and what he robbed me of, I wanted to stand up for myself. During my healing journey, I found that I left that little girl unprotected. So I needed to find a way to protect her again so that I could trust myself. And that's what I done. I
Yeah.
got justice for myself and I just had this feel and I went to and the detective would tell you I went there and I just let it all out and I can't believe like whew, that feeling,
Using your voice
yeah,
because you couldn't do that when
yeah,
you were a little girl.
yeah, yeah,
You're powerless when you're a child
yeah.
and somebody is taking advantage of you. Many children many children don't even understand what's happening to them.
No, no,
But making that report is important.
yeah,
And I'm grateful that you saw justice.
yeah,
But we know that making reports are not easy.
no,
Um,
no,
it's not.
no.
Um,
It's
Comes with a
over
lot of
and
risk.
over. Yeah, it's over and over again. You're remembering specific dates. There's a whole investigation. Like nobody talks about the waiting time between the time you make the report to the time you go to court. And I appreciate all the work. Obviously, I don't know firsthand the work that goes on behind the scenes. I'm on the other end of it.
Right.
I made my report 4 years before I went to trial.
Oh,
Then my trial ended in a mistrial, and I had to go back the next year. So the reporting process, sitting there, being recorded, reliving all of the trauma, things that I like, literally, was trying to get away from, and yeah, and suppressed, and that's what the 13-year addiction was from. Is like, hey, I don't want to feel whatever it is that I'm feeling, so I'm gonna go off and
I'm
and
out.
numb out,
mm,
and so yeah, the reporting process is not easy, but I will say the detectives that dealt with me made it a heck of a lot easier. Yeah,
Make a big difference, right?
definitely.
That is very
It's
important.
very important. I don't think without a good detective, without that we at the end of the trial we created this friendship, this relationship, I guess, in a sense. If I didn't have that, I didn't feel comfortable,
Yeah.
then it could have went very differently for me.
Because you had to trust him or her.
Yeah,
I mean, that
it was
we
her.
already got trust issues as
Yeah,
survivors. Now we're
exactly.
going to put somebody in our life who has to help us and support us through this,
Yeah,
and we have to trust them.
yeah,
You can't trust the people in your life who you're making the report to.
yeah, and all
Um,
the details and everything that I mean,
Reliving.
it's not just the simple things. Like you are going into detail, and to sit across the table to be recorded and telling the stranger, like, the gory details, because that's what you have to do, you know.
Yeah.
well, I imagine, I mean, that relationship is incredibly important because
It is.
if you don't have a rapport,
Mhm.
I can imagine how many people walk away
Exactly.
and don't and just prefer not to
Yeah,
Pursue it.
pursue it.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we have someone on the panel tonight that can answer some of these questions and talk to us about this difficult part, right? The reporting part. We know the revealing is difficult. It's really hard to, you know, start talking about things that you don't really want to talk about anymore. You've like I said, you've pushed down this pain, you know, for years, and now you're having to relive it and talk about it. So you've made, you know, you've told some people in your life you've been abused. You start dealing with that. You're, you know, hopefully seeing a psychologist, getting some help, and then you make the report to whoever that is, and then as adult survivors it would be to the police. If it's a child, it would be to Child and Family Services, and the police, and then that would be, you know, again escalated to the Department of Public Prosecution. Once they determine they believe a crime has occurred, then it gets, you know, it gets escalated, and then again in a courtroom. I mean, you're talking a lot about your abuse, but we know that reporting is important, right, Mark? I mean, vitally important.
Yeah, and I think, you know, Ted, well done you in so many ways, not only for your own sake and your own recovery,
Thank you.
but also for, you know, people need to be inspired by people that are prepared to come forward, and you know, thankfully I'm not a survivor. If I was, I'd like to think I'd be stepping up and saying it, but I've seen so much of it, of course,
Yeah.
because I've seen many cases, and I can, you know, over the years, of course, I won't name them, they're difficult too, but I legally, but you know, I've seen it where you've had a perpetrator, and you know for a fact that there's 12 victims.
Yeah.
I sat on a case like that as a judge, and I think there were 8 that had given statements that had come forward. By the time you got to trial, only 2 really courageous young women now were prepared to come forward and say, this is what happened. And the others, and like, yeah, perhaps 6 of them just couldn't
do
get
it.
to that final spot
Yeah.
of being able to do it. And that the system that you talk about, it does take time. You have to create that trust relationship and put on those cops that are trained to do that. And you know, could be lawyers that are trained to do that as well, to give that type of support, because not always you get the family support, right? You know that the family are like, oh, still want to stick your head in the sand, and that didn't happen. And you know how you say that about dear Uncle Joe, you know, and that's a child. All the things you said are quite right. It's like, it is the shame, the guilt, the embarrassment, the fear. All of these things are, and those 3 particularly are the trifactor of what it does: the shame, the embarrassment, and the guilt of, you know, of you're going to come along and say that about dear Uncle Joe that everybody loves. He's the guy that dresses up as Santa Claus at Christmas, with the kids on his lap and all. You know, it's like, how can you do that? And people, you know, kids will realize that and protect them. Yeah,
Protecting the perpetrator.
They protect the perpetrators.
But can I say,
and they set it up. They set it up like that as well, right? Like, it's like, I always think they always, you know, you often see it where, you know, they come out of jail and head for the church, and God knows the church does so much, as does God, for all of these things, but it's like, you will often find, you know, I always say, like, you know, the lions aren't hunting at the North Pole looking for gazelles, right? They go where it is, and they come out and say, I want to be in the community. I'll babysit at the Sunday school. I've seen it time and time again. I'm sure you have, where convicted people end up, you know, as the janitor at the school, and as the caretaker at the school, and
to try to prove.
Sunday school teacher at the school, like, you know,
Thank you very much.
wolves in sheep clothing, we call them.
Absolutely. And it's disgraceful that they try and use, like, you know, God or religion or the church that does so much for
even
people and family.
I mean, listen, it could be someone who, I've heard somebody, you know, stand up for somebody because he was in their group at golf. You know, he was a golf member. He was, you know, one of their friends. He would never do that.
And I think a lot of it too is the idea of, well, I would know, right? That whole concept, I would know.
Which you wouldn't.
Exactly.
Well, because of the shame, the guilt, of course you wouldn't. It's one of the, it's a deep, dark, you know, awful thing. Like, people try and keep all types of dark things a secret, whether it's addiction or alcoholism or, you know, whatever their twig is. So they learn to cover. They know that with this subject particularly is a complete abhorrence by society. And so then it's good to, you know, they're never sitting around around the dinner table having the conversations where this comes up, and you suddenly hear one of them say, well, you know, I kind of get it. Like, where they ain't going to say that, right? It's quite the opposite. They're thumping along the lines of, it's disgraceful, all these people should be shot. Then so the people around them hear that and think, well, not him, I've been around him, when he just like finds it abhorrent, and you know, he's condemning of that. he's a member of this place.
Or
He's
express himself
a
to
teacher.
society, yeah.
You know,
And let's imagine, can we imagine for a minute a child hearing that?
oh yeah.
Knowing that
Yeah.
person is abusing me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're making everybody in their life think they're just this great
He does so much for kids. Wow.
Manipulation.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
total
yeah,
deviant.
the manipulation and the grooming of exactly what you're saying to groom these kids to not, speak up against their relatives or whatever that's exactly what happened to me, is the grooming and the manipulation. It's
And
it's
kids are
yeah.
heavily manipulated by what we say to them.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily look for action. They look for what we say to them
Mhm.
Yes.
and believe it to be true.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I want to say one thing to the community. What your relative or best friend does to a child is no regard of you. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person at all. It doesn't mean that has any, and nobody's going to think bad of you just because you're related to somebody who's a pedophile. They shouldn't.
No.
Nobody should do that. This is on them, unless, of course, you've denied it, minimized it, avoided it, and not stood up for that child. Then you have a reason to feel that way. But if one of your relatives or best friends or somebody that you thought was really trustworthy abuses a child, that is no reflection on you. And I want everybody to know that, because sometimes family members take that on and they
Yeah.
have that shame because, but it wasn't their choice.
Yeah.
They didn't know this was happening.
Yeah.
And we have to support family members
Mhm.
of perpetrators. They need that support because they're not at fault for this.
Yeah.
The only way they can take that on is if they try to minimize it or blame a child or stand up for that perpetrator and say he or she would never do that.
Mhm.
We can't do that. We have to really think about children, and they need that support. But we can't blame the perpetrator's family members or friends.
No, and even the smartest people can be manipulated.
Yeah.
And, when you have an emotional connection to somebody, it's a lot harder to hold them accountable.
Very much. Yeah.
It is.
And I think that's the way to get in, is creating, we spoke about this in the first series of these, is creating that relationship with the offender and the victim, or survivor, is you're pulling them on your side the whole time with money, with treats, with whatever.
Yeah.
You're buying their silence.
Yes, that happens a lot.
And
Yeah.
making them question their experience.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
But this is where parenting is so important as well, and educating parents along the lines. I'm talking to your kids about these type of things. I always used to say to my kids from a young age, especially when we were traveling, like,
Yeah.
Nobody can give you anything that daddy or mommy can't give you,
Right.
right? There is no go see the puppies. I'll take you to see puppies,
Right.
right? There is no
That's
here's
right.
I'll buy you a candy bar.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
You want to go and look at
So-
whatever.
Mhm.
There's no magic in that. We will give you whatever you want to see like that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, and you need to be aware. And we taught them very, very young, like the people that come up that are trying to give you something,
Yeah.
these might be the really bad people
Yeah.
disguising themselves. From when our kids were young, all my kids knew that lesson. I remember my son, we were in New York with some friends, and he couldn't have been more than 6 years old, and we lectured this to all the kids. And I remember him turning around to his 6-year-old friend saying, "I told you not to talk to strangers." He had just said like hello to the doorman or whatever, and the doorman said, "Oh, have you been to see Santa?" And he's like, "Yeah." And my son took him and said, "You're talking to a stranger." They're like lecturing one thing, and I thought,
Yeah,
we were
that's
thrilled, like
great.
one 6-year-old lecturing the other
Exactly.
6-year-old, them
Yeah.
saying together. And so we don't have enough of that
Mhm.
on a parenting basis, where you have to build the relationships where, look, you can come and talk to me. And then the other thing, and this
Nothing's
is important as well, I get the
Thank
and
you.
when I say nothing's off limits,
limits.
Nothing's
we
off
have
limits.
it.
in this day and age,
Yeah, we have
it's
to.
also important
Mhm.
to be the monitor as
Mhm.
parents
Yes.
and go like this device is not your kid's private property,
Right.
right?
No.
Yeah.
And this stuff about like, oh, that's my business. No, it's not.
Oh, no, it's not.
That's my business.
That's
My
my
kids
I
get it.
thought that.
Honestly, everything you write, we can look at it, right? We got it checked. We know where your phone is.
Not because we don't
Yeah.
trust you, it's because we want to
Yeah,
protect
we don't
we
trust
we know
who's
what's out
out
there.
Yeah.
there.
Exactly.
And
So you
parents,
wanna
we
have it,
encourage you,
We're
do
gonna
your
look
due
at your
diligence.
phone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
We're
do your
gonna
due
we're
diligence.
gonna read your stuff, and
Yeah.
we're gonna know, what is going on, and try and encourage that conversation. Because whilst having never been, a direct victim, I can think back, my life as a young man that went to all kinds of, healthy environments, like, the church and Sunday school, and boys and girls and young people's groups like that. It's
Scouts
probably,
or
yeah,
Boy Scout.
that type of thing. Yes, along that line. And when I look back, sometimes I can think about, I was a pretty bellicose kind of young guy, so it wasn't like I wasn't the one that I don't think was kind of like, zero
Targeted.
him out, right? But when I look back, I can see it where I'm thinking, yeah, that guy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then the
Yep.
number of times where, I've been involved with cases where it was not particularly that guy, but a guy like that, who's in that position.
Yeah.
It's almost this,
Yeah.
if you look at it, you could look at the certain characteristics of the individual and be thinking,
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the motive?
why are
Yeah.
you involved with this?
Yeah.
Correct.
Right?
What's the
And sometimes
motive?
it's like, people say, oh, like that's awful
Yeah.
to say and all the rest of it. But then
Listen
you
to
have
your
to look
gut.
at it and say, yeah, there's some gut, there's something's not quite right
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
And
Be cautious. Don't take any risks.
no,
But- yeah.
it's like, and people have to be aware of that and
Yeah.
spot these things. And
And the thing is, though, Mark, I want to get back to reporting. Reporting is critical. We have to report cases of child sexual abuse.
when you say reporting, you mean the
Report
victims reporting or the
Yeah, and the family of the victims.
Sure.
Years ago, we did not have prevention education
Yeah.
in this country. We didn't have awareness. When I first
There's a
started
lot of victims
SCARS,
out there.
yeah, and
Yeah.
there are a lot of adult victims. And when I first started SCARS, as a founding, being with me when we founded SCARS, Mark, I couldn't find the word molest on any website. I went to every website, and the word molest wasn't on any website. It was so taboo. But I think we have really helped in this country in terms of prevention education.
Yeah.
Thank God for Darkness to Light organization, who creates prevention curriculums around what to do so parents know how to talk to their children, how to minimize the risk, how to react responsibly if a child tells you that they're being abused. It's very, very important. The challenge is once we report it, it's what comes after that.
Yeah.
It's all the challenges that come out, repeating the story
Yes.
3 times, Child and Family Services and the police and, the DPP, and then get in a courtroom and, as I said it before, perpetrators have defense lawyers who are, representing them. And so stories have to be repeated again. Sometimes I've seen where children are made to feel like they're lying or they're guilty. I mean, they're children. We're re-traumatizing children when we do that. I think we have come a long way in terms of interviewing children in this country. And I want to thank Justice Sabera Williams on that, because she was very instrumental
That was
in
amazing.
really thinking about how we can do
Yeah.
better for
Yeah.
children in our courtrooms. I'm so grateful.
Yeah.
And I remember, her being really passionate about that. And I also know we're doing a good job, I think, with adult survivors because, the perpetrator now is in magistrate court anyway.
Yeah.
And I know they're using that for Supreme. The perpetrator's on one side of the room and the survivor or the person, who has brought the case, they're going, is on the other side of the room, and that gives that distance for them, right? But they're still seeing that person. I mean, it's still re-traumatizing survivors. But I think, there is some room for improvement in terms of getting these cases through faster, would you say? And more courtrooms. I actually
Oh my
sit in
goodness.
courtrooms,
The
and I feel
courtroom
I feel
issue.
bad for the justice system. I feel that it's overloaded. I feel that we don't.
I actually crave for the justice system, and I'm involved in it. But you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually have issued judgments recently. There's coming about, what is needed more, and what we have to have more. And the problem often comes down to, and I'll say it here, it's funding.
Yeah.
Funding.
But we
The
need to
justice system is woefully,
Yeah.
woefully
underfunded.
underfunded. And I always say, just
know that,
because we
everyone. What do we
because
do?
we walk around in 18th century period dress with wigs on, we don't have to act like it, right?
Right,
We need
right.
to get into it. We don't even have a modern recording system that transcribes as you
Talk
go.
about that.
So what happens, and
That
particularly,
was
and this is where
traumatizing to me.
the first thing that
You know?
needs to happen, and the first thing that needs to be addressed,
Yeah.
and I've tried to raise this, I raised it through a judgment that I wrote recently with regard to funding. And there was a case that went to the Court of Appeal called Williams, where Justice Bell, who recently retired in the Court of Appeal, said that we have to have these things organized better, because that was a child case, and there were, in the magistrate's court, there were 50 appearances over like a 3-year period.
Oh my
And the
goodness.
point he made was, I know you get like kind of like thinking about it, it's like
Yeah.
child case. I think we're getting better at this, and certainly the justices and the magistrates that are there now are very, very focused on this, that child cases have to be prioritized,
Correct.
number one,
Yeah.
and they have to go like this through the system. because you can't be pulling a child out of school
No.
Oh,
go and repeat what you've just said and
Exactly.
having the whole ploy and system manipulated on an adjournment, in this case as a priority. Those cases have to have the priority,
Can
right?
I
And
say
you have to do
something?
that way.
The way to really understand this and be empathetic to this, imagine a family who wakes up in the morning thinking they're going to go to court. They prepare their child, they get them all ready, empower them. We can do this.
Mentally prepared.
Mentally ready and prepared, and then only to find out they get a
It's not
phone
gonna
call
happen
and
today.
say, "Oh, sorry, not today."
Yeah.
And then it happens again.
Yep.
And then it happens again.
Happens every day until you do appear.
Imagine
Yeah.
what that does, not only to children, but also adult survivors.
Yeah.
So we do have to do better. Where do we find the funding for this? How do we make this known? I mean, I have to tell you, and I'm sure I spoke to you about it, Mark, is even up, that beautiful Supreme Court building. I remember being in that room and having to go outside to make a phone call, and the door squeaking so loud. I even went home to my husband and said, "Jerry, do you have a tool that can go up to the Supreme Court and fix the door?"
Yeah.
Because it's
It's the old court.
the old court.
Yeah, yeah.
oh my
That big,
gosh.
beautiful
Beautiful
building.
court building.
I mean, what you would just feel so beautiful when you walk. I mean, you felt really regal when you went in there, and you wanted to give respect to the judges and respect to the lawyers sitting up there, and you felt it. But then you go outside and it's making all this noise, the door, and I'm like, can you just go up there and get a tool and fix it? Like, we should be giving respect to that building.
Well, that of course is sitting there basically empty and cleaned
That's the
out
Supreme
now. It's
Court,
called
right?
the original.
Yeah.
And I love appearing in that court. I love sitting as a
yeah.
judge in that court. I love
Absolutely.
It's
being a
very
defense
important.
lawyer in there. It's
Yeah.
great. You get the tourists come up and see it because it's kind of an oldie worldy court.
Yes, yes.
But it was not and has not been modernized. But these things, it comes down to, to funding. We just have not been provided with it. And, the judgment I was addressing recently, and it goes back to other judgments from Canada and other constitutional countries where they're saying, you can't, these things are the fault of the state and they can't excuse these lapses in the
much.
justice system
Yeah, thank you
because
very
other
much.
things are
Yes.
prioritized.
Right,
And what people
exactly.
don't get, people will say, politicians, and God only knows I've been one of those for my sins. But it's a case of everybody, all of the departments want money. I want money for education. I want money for health. I want money for roadworks. And the public is complaining about it all. The truth of the matter is that it is the justice system
It is.
that needs to be prioritized
Yes.
because so much flows from that. You want to
Correct.
talk about
Thank you very
your
much.
prison is overcrowded. Why? Because all of these young people were victimized sexually as children.
Thank you very
And
much.
now the recidivism rates are high because
criminalize
they end up in
their
prison. They
activities
become
and-
criminalized
yeah. Thank you
because
very
they're
much.
angry, with regard to
Thank you very much.
drugs,
cares
the
about
drug
me.
disclosure, all the rest of it.
Yeah.
People turn
Yes.
to the outlets of drugs and so on.
Yes.
So then you've got the
Exactly.
expenses, all of that. They get into a criminal element because of drugs. Where does it all start? Because the justice system is underfunded,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
why do you have cases being thrown out where
Yes.
there's been 50 appearances in a
Yes.
child case?
Yes.
Wow.
Because
Yeah.
the system is underfunded.
Yeah.
Because those cases, you should have recording and transcripts that come up. That type of case, you
Yes.
should be 3-4 days
Yes.
set aside and heard
Right.
and done.
Yes.
And what's your point? It's horrible thing, and you can see it. Like you get that child ready 50 times or even 10 times. Like you more. Like,
Three times.
You're gonna have a
It's
you're gonna
more
have,
than
you're gonna have a
enough, you know?
serious. You're gonna have heart surgery tomorrow. Oh no, we're canceling the heart surgery to next week. And then-
Yeah.
I mean, people don't see the impact of that. The stress would be huge, but it's the same thing,
Yeah.
particularly in child cases. So we must, as a system,
Yeah.
Find
you
the
just
money.
need find the money and prioritize those cases.
Yes.
And I mean, I see it all the time now. I don't see it's there. We have in this country an issue with too few judges, too few prosecutors, too few defense lawyers. And we can't write the defense lawyers off because
No,
the
we
defense
can't.
lawyers sometimes are the ones, people forget this. They think, oh, they're just going to defend. A good, proper, honest defense lawyer, of which, I think the majority of all my colleagues are, if somebody comes in, they're not making cases up for you. If you come along and say, I have done this, they are there to help facilitate you pleading guilty.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And they
you-
should.
And they should. And I can tell you that I think, and I have been in that position where this is and then not to say, oh, I've done X, Y, Z, and I molested this child, but I want to plead not guilty. No.
Yeah,
That's
doesn't
not the
work
way
that
we're going to go with it. So, but all of those things, the right funding on that, when I say, we don't have enough judges, we don't have, the system is overburdened. And it was in court this morning and we're saying, when is this, not a child abuse case, but another case, when is this going to be heard?
Yeah.
every defense lawyer that's known is in the country, because we don't have enough of them, all involved in the same case. There's
Yeah.
about 4 cases like that. And I immediately said, this case isn't going to come on until 2026.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
2026.
Everyone, if you don't believe us, go sit in a courtroom.
Yeah.
Right.
I honestly, because I have done that recently, and I felt for all the courtroom staff. I felt for the judge. I felt for the lawyers, for the DPP, the defense lawyers, the victims, I can't say I feel sorry for a perpetrator of child sexual abuse. That I don't have any empathy for. Someone who destroys a child's life forever, or changes a child's life forever. I didn't have any empathy for them, but I had empathy for all the people in that courtroom. That the frustration, because not only, and the jury, but not only are they hearing cases that touch the soul, but they're coupled that with the frustration of this of an underfunded system.
Look, it is a systemic problem. And to your point, though, Devin, I totally get you're not feeling sorry for the perpetrator, but one has to bear in mind at the outset, there's always going to be, and this is just a matter of the law, it's not going to change, there's that presumption of innocence that has to apply to the defendant, and the rights that run to the defendant. And I totally get the anger and how that tedious that is. But I will say this: if you think about this, right? If you ensure the rights of the defendant to have a case heard in a timely fashion, guess what?
Okay.
You're ensuring the rights of the child.
Right.
Correct.
Exactly. Yes,
Because
I do.
the
That
case,
a
the
little
case,
bit.
of,
Yes.
the case that I
Correct.
mentioned earlier, where there were the 50 appearances,
Mhm.
what the Court of Appeal said was, we have to think about the kids.
Yeah.
They can't keep coming backwards and forwards.
Right.
But if you even start with the fundamentals and the principles of justice,
Yeah.
that justice, the Constitution says you're entitled to a fair trial
Mhm.
in a reasonable time.
Right.
If you ensure that the defendant gets those rights,
Right.
the spill-on effect is that the family, the child victim, everything like that, are protected.
Right.
So it's not a case of feeling
Okay.
sorry for them. I get that.
You know what?
Right?
Really
But
tough
you-
and
no, but
because
you-
of my
no,
family.
of course I do.
Yeah.
It's not a case of feeling sorry for them,
Yeah.
but if on a practical level,
Yeah.
Right.
think about it as a gameplay about, wow, I'm actually protecting the victims by ensuring
Yeah.
the defendant's rights. If I ensure that he gets a fair trial,
Yeah.
if I ensure that he has a trial in a reasonable time, which is the way it should be, I protect the rights of all these kids. Because to your point, the reason that people don't want to come forward is,
Mhm.
I don't want to go through 50 appearances.
Right.
Right.
I don't want to go through a delayed process. I don't want to go through all
Exactly.
this. If you ensure the process, which means you have to get your head around saying, I'm going to make sure
Mhm.
the defendant has that. I mean, in one case where I was sitting as a judge, I remember saying to defense counsel, bending over backwards for your client. And they said, yes, you are. And I thought, yeah, that doesn't mean they're going to get off, right? It doesn't mean they're going to be found not guilty. You form your impression as a judge. But I did, because I knew that ensuring those rights, ensuring that we have the time done, that the evidence and the evidence of the adult victims who would play out as it should, and that there would likely be a conviction. Whereas it doesn't get thrown out by
That's why-
technicality.
Right.
A loophole.
There's no loopholes that
That's
the judge
why-
often creates.
right,
Right.
And you make a statement. So that's why when you make a statement, that offender is still allowed to be free. Because I can't tell you how much that,
Well, I mean, look,
how much that
get
bothered
it, but you
me.
can't.
But
That's
I
what. But that's
understand
where
what you're saying.
that's where the constitutional right, and I think the most important constitutional right, which
Right.
umbrellas all the other laws,
Yeah.
is contained in Section 6 of the Constitution, which is right to a fair trial in a reasonable time. So
Right.
that's a fundamental right
Mhm.
according to the Constitution, and as advocates in protecting children, it sounds counterintuitive, but those are rights you want to advocate
right,
and protect.
correct.
Where do you do? You
No, I
make sure there's
understand,
funding
yeah.
in the system.
Yeah.
You
So
want
how
that,
do we do
you
that?
want
That he
that
has
trial,
a
you know?
defense lawyer.
Yeah.
Guess what? Part of the problem is, I mean, so this is a case not so long ago where it's like, oh, couldn't get legal aid for a year. Guess what that does?
Oh,
Causes delay.
delay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guess what then the application is?
Right.
Can't have a fair trial in a
Oh.
reasonable time
Yeah.
because it's delayed. Why did it get delayed? Took so long for him to get legal aid.
Mm.
Whereas, you'd be thinking like, oh, he's a defendant, he's perpetrated this crime, he's
He's got to get
accused of
off
it,
the street
and
because I don't want other
yeah,
people
and
to
you'd
be
be
hurt.
thinking,
That's how I
That's
felt.
what I'm thinking.
yeah, but you'd
Exactly,
also be thinking,
But
like,
man,
why
don't
should
want
we
that.
help him out with a lawyer? Why should we help him out with legal aid?
Right.
We want that
Counterintuitive, you
conviction.
should say, hey,
Yeah.
I'll take you down to the legal aid office myself,
Yeah.
right?
On the other flip side of it, I don't want to walk out of that courtroom
Yeah,
until I got a
get it
conviction.
done,
And I don't want
right,
to
you
hear
see,
10,
yeah.
5, 2 years later
Exactly.
that
Right.
they are making an appeal
Yeah.
to that conviction
Because
because
it's
of
delayed.
ABDCEE, right? So, and I just want to hit on what you were saying about the legal system being underfunded and so on. But that also creates like a lack of faith, and it's also re-traumatizing when it comes to the survivors that are reporting.
Yeah.
So it is very important to like, now that I'm listening to you and understanding, that these little things, really need to be addressed. The re-traumatization of any survivor, whether it be child or adult, is severe, and what you have to go through just to bring yourself back up to that point.
Yeah.
And
we
it
don't
shouldn't
need-
be.
Yeah, we don't need anything to deter
No,
people from reporting.
no, not at
Yeah.
all.
People who are dangerous to children.
Yeah.
So we've got to fix this system. We've got to, I don't know if this is going to be on deaf ears or not for those in power, but we got to find the money
Yeah.
put into the
Yeah.
justice system
Yeah.
so that we protect our children and future generations of children in this country. That is critical.
And for
But,
free,
but
yeah.
to I think that the different angle that you wouldn't like people wouldn't necessarily think of, Debbie, in supporting the justice system, it means we're going to we're going to do everything we can to make sure the rights of the defendant are legally protected, that they
Right.
have legal aid, that they have the right to a lawyer, that they have all these things because. And I don't have
Keep it
statistics on this, but I bet you if you looked at it, that most of these child cases, Williams is the one I mentioned, there's 50 appearances, you know why they get thrown out? On technicalities. Not because anybody turns around and says, I think the child was lying.
Right.
Technicalities.
Yeah.
Technicalities because of the failings in it took so long to get to trial. Why? Because we didn't have courtrooms. So and it all leads back, all roads lead to Rome, right? It all leads back to the state not funding it properly.
Yeah.
If it was funded, you'd have those trials heard. So it sounds so counterintuitive. Can you imagine the extra sense of being a victim calling around saying, look, we got to make sure this guy gets legal aid, right?
Yeah.
Hey, yeah, I'm the victim. You make sure he gets legal aid, right?
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're sitting there saying, oh my God, it's going to collapse
Yeah.
because he
Yeah.
didn't get that trial in a timely
Yeah.
way.
Yes.
And that's why you want to say you got to provide the recording system with the transcription properly so that it's all protected, what gets said, the judge is finding the balance, right? Because that way, my experience is that the truth will win out, right? The child that has the courage to come forward
Yeah.
and give evidence will win out. Some of those cases collapse. You know why? Because the child comes 10, 12 times and then goes, I'm not going anymore.
No,
And suddenly you're there and the judge is sitting there saying, where's your witness? We can't find them.
Yeah.
They're not coming today.
And a child
Case out,
questioned
you know?
over and over is actually, mentally they're going to start to believe or think that they're saying
Reading
something
down.
wrong.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
they change their story
Yeah.
because they're scared.
Yeah.
The more delay,
Yeah.
the more you delay it. We're all human,
Mhm.
and you get these little minutia points. The more you can deal it out. Well, it didn't happen like this; it happened this way. You have that, and we're just human like that.
No, it's
Yeah.
true. But I do want to say that what's critical for the child is the support from the people in the child's life.
Correct.
To say that no matter what happens in this case, we did the right thing.
Yeah.
We did the right thing.
We
We
believe
reported
you.
it. We believe you. You did nothing wrong. It wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
We're going to do everything we can to do as much as possible to make sure this person is held accountable. But as I did in my case with my children, I said to both of my children, he may not go to jail, but we're still doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Because I prepared them for the worst,
Yeah.
just in case.
Mhm.
But I had to let them know, even though the system might not, it's not what we might want,
Exactly. You have to.
we're still doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what I had to tell them. And that's what children have to know. Because we're not in control of certain things, like funding in the justice system,
Yeah.
Or something happening, or having to repeat it. But I did have to say to my girls, we're still doing the right thing.
Yeah.
Reporting is the right thing. We can't stop reporting because
Right.
because of all these other factors.
No, not at all.
Because children have to see accountability and consequence. Because what will happen is, like from years ago, if someone doesn't react responsibly in a child's life when they go to report or tell the parent or tell a guardian or tell somebody, that child is going to grow up to be an adult and become very resentful and very angry at the person in their life.
Yes.
For not reacting responsibly and not
Yep.
doing the right thing. Because I don't think the law will ever change that it's against the law to sexually harm a child. I would hope not.
No.
No.
So a child will grow up to be an adult and go, wait a minute, that was against the law. And wait a minute, why didn't
Exactly.
anybody do
Nobody
something?
Thank you
Yeah.
very
Nobody
much.
did anything. So, you know, regardless of what the outcome can be, it's still the right thing to make that report.
Yeah.
Make that report. Let the authorities decide whether a crime has occurred.
Yep.
And on the flip side, we got to keep working on getting financial resources in our justice system. That is crucial.
It really is. But I think also to your point that, you know, and what you just said there, Debbie, is it's not about the end result of a conviction, but just how you became empowered by the ability to express what had happened to
Yeah.
you. And I'm sure you would
Correct.
agree as a therapist,
Absolutely.
it's that ability to sit
The
down
power
and say,
that you
this
fill yourself
happened to me.
with.
And I'm sure
Yeah.
that somebody coming to professionally even being able to do that, and you would, well, you have duty bound, right, to tell them they have to go and report it. If they're not capable of doing that, even the process of being able to vent it out
Yeah.
and let it go for so many years, carried like, you know, this deep, dark, horrible secret. I mean, start there. And then you get with somebody like yourself saying, now we got to take my hand, we got to get you to the next step.
Yeah,
Don't you want to
correct.
help somebody who's in the
Yes.
same position as you?
Yeah.
And you build, the building blocks are find someone that you can share this with. Share like that. You've
Support.
got, build your support.
Build your support
group.
system.
Now you can
Yeah.
report, you build it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And now it doesn't matter if they walk, you have done the right thing. You've given others
Yeah.
courage to
Yeah.
do the right thing.
Yes.
And not only that, you have unburdened
Yeah.
yourself
Yes.
by being able to say this happened.
Yeah.
Nobody can argue your experience.
Exactly.
No.
I want to say when I was younger, when all this was happening to me, and I remember it clear as day. And they were doing the telephone surveys the other night, you know, and they were asking about the police and all that. You know, when I was younger, there used to be policing in the neighborhoods.
Yeah.
There used to be the policeman will come and knock on your
Yeah.
door and say, hey, you know, just checking by, seeing how you.
Yeah.
Till this day, do you know, I remember those officers and the feeling that I had of wanting
Protection.
to just say something and like, oh, do they know about him? Like, you know what I mean? And they like literally the police knew about this man that was living in my house. I'll be very honest. He had his conviction, his first conviction the year after I was born.
And why was he allowed to be?
And
with
he
you?
was hey, when it
I mean,
comes
that's
to
the type
family,
of thing we not
Yeah.
need to-
exactly. But when it
Yeah.
comes to families, you know, I can't answer that question. You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah, but we didn't understand the risk.
exactly.
That's the whole
My
thing.
mom is passed, and unfortunately, a lot of those answers that I want to get, I can't get, and
Yeah.
I just have to live my life like that. But
Yeah.
you know,
Thank goodness for prevention education.
Yeah.
But I also want to say to all the adults out there who didn't react responsibly,
Yeah.
You didn't have prevention education 30 years ago. We didn't even have prevention education 15 years ago.
Yeah.
In Bermuda. And I think when people know better, they do better. So don't take that, you know, that guilt on yourself. What I would say to the adults that didn't react responsibly, to the children in their life when they disclosed or when they had a reasonable suspicion or when they, you know, discovered it, if you didn't react responsibly, just say to that child or that adult now, I am sorry that I didn't do the right thing. I've realized now I wasn't equipped. I didn't have the tools to react responsibly, but I love you. That's what I think we should do. So I don't want anybody carrying that burden of guilt who didn't react responsibly, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because you didn't have the tools. There was no awareness. There was no advocacy around this. But now there is.
just taboo.
It was just taboo.
Shut mouths and taboo and like, oh, you know, you can't talk.
Exactly.
That's why your work is so important, Debbie.
Thank you
Scar's
very
work is so important because, you know, the ability to go in and speak to a bunch of kids or speak to them in school, tell these stories and share them. And, you know, really, you know, when you're sitting in that classroom, and I bet you'd agree, there's not a single classroom where some child isn't a victim.
Correct.
Yeah, but we don't talk to
Well,
kids. Just want to make
no,
that
I
clear.
know that.
We train the adult.
Right. But
Yes.
yeah, I
Coalition
realize
for the Protection of Children.
that, but
Yeah.
it filters down, of course. Right?
Yes, it
because
does.
it has to get to the level of kids, whether it's through the teachers or whatever, that someone is here that you can come and share your secret.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Tell that, and that you can, and also that, you know, you have the power, unlike the power that was taken away from you, but you have the power here to share your secret,
Yeah.
and that I'm going to protect you in that, and we're going to build out how we go next with that
Yes.
together. But I think, you know,
Yes.
the starting base has to be being unburdened by, I'm sharing this,
Yes.
and then being able to do everything you can, because that has to be that person of trust, you know, that will deal with that child. Otherwise, you know,
Yeah.
the rest are scared to death anyway.
Yeah.
All the things you said, it's the embarrassment, the shame, the guilt, the fear.
The fear.
The fear.
The fear is probably one of
Of
the biggest
Yeah.
things.
fear, like, and the guilt of, like, if you mustn't say anything, it's our secret, like, I'll go to jail. And imagine how that would make your mommy feel, as your stepdad even. These are all the manipulative things, and of course they get said. Oh, very, very real, right?
And that's why I think it's so important as parents now. Like I'm a daughter, mother of a beautiful daughter, and I've almost been very transparent with her along the way of my journey, when it comes from my addiction through to my trial and why my trial had to happen in the first place. My daughter is at the age where she just had her first date recently.
Wow.
My heart's like this, and I'm like,
Oh, absolutely.
all these things, you know what I mean? But I know in my heart that I have done the absolute best. I've given her all the information. And when it comes to my daughter, like, she knows I was addicted to drugs. So I'm gonna tell her, listen,
Yes.
I'm gonna tell her the real truth, not what they're teaching you in school, not what you see on TV. I'm gonna tell you firsthand experience.
Wow.
And when it comes to other things such as child sexual abuse, I'm very real with my daughter, and I think, going back to the point that you made about it starts with the parents first, but sometimes in real reality, the parents are taking the side of the offender, so us speaking out is I see the change in Bermuda over the years. More people are coming forward, and I hope over the years that this will inspire more children to speak up and know that
Yes.
there is a whole community of people and women and men out there that are struggling and suffering and have experienced the exact things that you have, and there is a life way beyond that. This is just a little
Absolutely.
obstacle, or not a little obstacle, sorry, but
Yes.
this is one of those things that you can overcome.
Yes.
But you
Because,
know.
well, the truth is, you're absolutely right, Mickey. And many parents have been abused themselves.
Yes.
So they haven't had healing, right? We've
Yeah.
talked
Well,
about
yeah,
this.
and I've said before,
Wanna discuss
just
it with
because
kids.
you are the parent of your child doesn't mean you know how to talk to them.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean you know how to get information from
Yeah,
them.
yeah.
So if you and as a parent, you're going to have a strong emotional reaction to information like this.
Yes.
So making sure that you're equipped with how to talk to
Yeah.
your kids and not interrogate them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or not be scared and not be able to act.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because
not
nothing didn't happen when you were little,
Yeah.
so you don't know how to respond because
Or-
you're struggling yourself.
or forecasting your feelings onto that.
Exactly.
You have this parents that, because we don't, I mean, you don't come with the, nobody gets a degree to be a parent, right? It's
For real.
But if you come along
Yeah.
and you notice, like, suddenly, you're a happy-go-lucky, like, 11, 12-year-old just has a behavioral switch up,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? And where you're just like, oh, they're just not the same child they were last week, and what's
Yeah,
going on,
red
and their
flag.
behavior's
That's
gone.
a reason
Of
to ask
huge red
questions.
flag,
Yeah.
right? But and parents, like, well, go to the kid and say, is there anything wrong? No, everything's fine. Another
Yeah.
red flag, right?
Exactly.
It's like,
Exactly.
what you
Yeah.
need to do is call somebody like here and just say, my child's had a real
Yeah.
switch up. I don't know what to do.
Yeah.
How do I talk
Exactly.
to them
Yeah.
and get, what I would say to viewers is, like, if you are suddenly seeing this type of switch up in your child, let's
Change
call
of
it that.
behavior, yeah.
Not obvious, but a real change of behavior where they're more moody, or they're sad, or they're angry all the time, and they weren't before. Why is
Yeah.
suddenly an angry kid, and they're 12?
Like community
Then-
thing is so
Then
important.
exactly. Go and talk to somebody who can say how you start to navigate and approach that, and where are they, and what are they doing, and when did this behavior start, and where
Yes.
they went on, and like,
Yes.
oh well, they went on this summer camp for a week, and
Yeah.
now
And now
Yeah.
they're old.
how
Yeah.
you put the dog
Yeah.
together. Like, well, hold on, and now they're in that group where they're going back, and this person was at the
Yeah.
camp, and so on. Put it together. Talk to somebody.
Yeah.
It's community policing, community involvement therapeutically,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
even legally.
Yeah.
Come along and say, this is. I've had people come to
Yeah.
me, thankfully, with that story. Like, can you get in and see me? You never know why people are going to come to you. They say, I want to talk about, like, a child issue, and they come in, and their child issue is, my child has switched up. I don't know what to do about it. Drive me spare. What I suddenly go, like, red flag.
Yeah.
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 Here, I got a number for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I got
Exactly.
cool.
Be punish the child or say, oh, just get over it.
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
You're misbehaving. And
Yeah,
you didn't
and-
used to.
Yeah, now we come from a
And
trauma.
parents need to put it up about, like, who you hanging around in school, or, oh, you know what? It's, and God knows I have one of these, like, a
Denial.
boy turning 15. It's hormones.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, it's hormones, and they're going to all go through these changes. And of course, there's degrees of that, but one has
are,
to be
yeah.
really sensitive to, no, something is really profoundly switched up in this case.
Let's dig
Yeah.
deeper.
And
Yeah.
often it's anger, I think you'd agree. Like, suddenly they're throwing shit around.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If
They're
it's
frustrated.
negative
Or
behavior,
they're like,
yeah.
they're venting and they're frustrated
They're
and
trying to let you
they're
know. They're
acting
trying to
out,
let you
right?
know.
These are
Yeah.
the
Send
warning
you a
signs, the
message.
red flags, as you say.
Yeah.
And you suddenly need to go like, maybe they're just acting up and they're around the wrong company. But your checklist should include maybe there's something wrong.
Yeah.
Maybe they're being
Or they're
abused. Maybe
idolizing
there's something
somebody.
going on
Or
that
bullied.
they're around or
Yeah.
bullied. That it's something other than they're just being naughty or they're
Yeah.
going through stages
Yeah,
or they're getting
definitely.
Yeah.
older and going
Definitely.
through the teenage years or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
Like parents have to
Investigate.
really stop and say
Yeah.
and tick those boxes.
Yeah.
Maybe it is they're just like, going through that.
But rule it out.
But
Yeah.
but go through and say, well, is there something else?
Yeah, yeah.
Else. I think so often as parents, we probably don't always have our checklist of saying, because you don't want to hear it. Like it could be abuse because even then parents are saying, they'll feel guilty.
God, yeah.
Like how did I let that happen?
How did I
How did I
not
let them go
see
to that
this?
camp and not
Yeah.
think this guy?
Well, yeah.
How did I let like Uncle Bobby babysit them?
Yeah.
Like
Unfounded
that.
guilt.
I didn't see it. So the parent then has all this guilt. And what they do, like so often, is the proverbial ostrich and stick their head in the
Denial.
sand because they don't want to tick the box that says, "Is anybody messing around?"
Yeah.
And
And
I didn't.
ask that
I didn't see it.
question, and I didn't
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah.
I want to see it.
You don't want to.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because then you have to deal with it.
Because it's happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is where the courage
I was about
has to
yeah.
come from the parents
Yeah.
Yes.
checking
Yeah.
their checklist.
Yeah.
you
It
know?
does. And I would say this, sign up for a SCARS training.
Yeah.
It is free.
There
Yeah.
you go.
You don't have to pay for it. It's 3 hours of your time, thanks to the Darkness to Light organization, that we have this free prevention education in our community, thanks to our donors, our community and corporate donors that pay for it. So this has been great conversation, everyone. I thank
Yeah.
all of you, all of your wisdom.
Thank you.
Any last words, Dr. Hancock, on for the audience, for our community to help really understand how difficult it is to reveal, how difficult it is to report, how difficult it is to relive their experience, right?
Definitely very difficult. And, so it's very important to have a network of people that you trust, that you can talk to. And then also, again, talking to your kids, establishing rapport. You can't just wake up one day and think that, oh, I'm the parent, they'll talk to me, if you aren't emotionally bonded and connected with your child, even before this happens.
Love it. Thank you. How about you, Mark? Any last words?
We really need to address the funding of the justice system.
Yes.
Right. And, I hope I've made that point about how much flows from that. And
Definitely.
even what,
Yeah.
is the misconcept of like, we got to ensure the rights of the defendant because we ensure the rights of the
Of
child.
the child.
Absolutely.
I love
Just
that.
so
That's a little
important.
counterintuitive, but if
That's
people
really
look at it, go like,
important.
wow, but then they suddenly go like, wow, when you look at the cases and get thrown out,
Yeah.
it makes sense.
Yeah,
right?
it makes
So it's
perfect
important.
And I was definitely like really, really pleased with the outcome of my trial.
Yeah.
I know last year it was 18 years.
God.
That's the most that an offender has gotten
Yeah.
in quite a while. And yeah.
Well, we
So-
didn't get into
so
all
the
sentences
importance-
evidence on that.
Yeah,
topic.
the importance
We
of
got work to do on
yeah,
that too.
but throughout that process, the importance of that trial sticking was so important.
Yeah, it
Yeah,
was. And
it
we
was so
thank you for
Yeah.
using your voice and doing that.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you
you're
for
making
being an
always.
advocate in this community.
Always. Yeah.
Really, you took your pain and you turned it into a purpose,
Yeah.
Mickey Parfit.
Yeah, it's my calling, I think.
And it sure is. And I'm honored to know you and so proud of you.
Thank you.
And thank you for being here today as well. And thank both of you. So we started this show with the quote, "You can't be brave if you've only had wonderful things happen to you." Revealing our scars of sexual abuse takes bravery. Revealing the darkness of the secret, exposing it to the light, that takes bravery. Healing and intervention begin when the secret gets revealed. If a heart scarred from sexual violation doesn't receive healing, it can become infected. Wounds from child sexual abuse are painful if they aren't treated for properly. Resentment can build up and cause anger towards the adults in the child's life who chose not to expose it. Reporting our scars from sexual abuse as children takes bravery, and it's necessary. It's an opportunity for survivors to show the perpetrator that they won't continue to be silenced. Children who are abused must see consequence and accountability as an important part of their healing. They must know that the adults in their life will do anything to show them that this is wrong and unlawful. They must be encouraged that reporting won't be easy, but it is the right thing to do. Their expectations of the outcome must be managed because no one has control over the justice system. We thank all the brave souls who took the stand to let the perpetrator know, their perpetrator know, what they did to them was wrong and they cannot hide any longer. Whether justice crumbles or not, they did the right thing. To report a case of child sexual abuse in Bermuda, call Child and Family Services Kids Hotline at 278-9111 or Bermuda Police Service 211. You can also make an anonymous call by calling 1-800-8477. We thank everyone on our panel this evening. We thank our sponsor, QBE Foundation, for partnering with us to improve the lives of children in our community. And we thank you for spending the last hour with us. Good night, everyone.
This episode of Survivor Hour has been graciously sponsored by the QBE Foundation, creating strong, resilient, and inclusive communities.
Hi, my name is Debbie Ray Rivers, founder and executive director of SCARS, Bermuda's only child sexual abuse prevention charity organization. SCARS was formed over 10 years ago to create greater awareness of the devastation that child sexual abuse can cause in the life of a child, their family, and a community. Children who experience child sexual abuse carry an invisible burden that can show up in unexpected ways, like bullying. Studies show that childhood trauma caused by abuse can affect a child mentally, emotionally, physically, or even cause them to hurt others. We can change this. By understanding the deeper causes of bullying, we can create a world where every child feels safe, respected, and supported. Intervene if you see anyone using their power to victimize the innocence and powerlessness of a child.
Parents, please take an interest in your child's online activity. It's not prying, it's protecting. We encourage you to do your research on what apps your child is using because it is important to keep them protected. Use privacy settings for your little ones and develop open and honest conversations around cyber safety with your teens. This helps prevent online interaction with digital predators. These predators exist and they are experts on grooming children online. So arm yourself with the knowledge and tools to safeguard your child. Visit scarsbermuda.com to learn more.